Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on the principles of self-assurance for RTOs. Guys, I do need to apologize. Those of you that were here on the last webinar will recall that I was recording from a friend's house because we're busy doing massive alterations at home. Well, not massive, just massively loud. I'm still working from home, or I'm working from home again today. I'm broadcasting from my home office today, and there's noise in the background. I've sort of closed doors where I can to try and minimize the noise. At least the swearing Irish tradies aren't here today. But yeah, Murphy's Law says that the entire neighborhood seems to be mowing their lawns. So my apologies in advance for my apologies in advance for any background noise that you guys can hear. I have closed windows where I can, I've closed doors, and yeah, just let me know if there's any issues hearing me. Can I just have some hands up or some kind of indication that people can actually hear me? I know I have had problems with that in the past. Jaswinder, you said there's a sound problem. Can you not hear me? Excellent. Michelle, hi. Thank you. You can hear me. Hi, Jack. Hey, Marsha. Awesome. Vinit, you can hear me loud and clear, etc., etc., etc. So great to hear that. Guys, we have got a full house, well, an almost full house today. We are 497 people here on the webinar out of 500 seats. So yes, I hope that I'm going to be delivering some really valuable information to you. And once again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join me today. As you guys know, I don't take your company for granted, and I'm really appreciative that you are actually spending this hour with me. Before we kick off, exciting news. I said to you guys on the last webinar, I told you guys that we were going to start marketing the 2023 VET Compliance Conference in Brisbane. Guys, the conference is going to be amazing. We are live streaming. Well, first of all, we've got master classes on assessment development, on validations. On the symposium day, we've got ASPR are going to come and chat to us about their current audit practices. We have got an expert in AI who's going to be chatting with us about AI in the education sector. We've got Australia's leading solicitor in the vet sector who's going to be chatting with us about what to do if you get a notice of intention to sanction or cancellation or things like that. We've got forensic auditors there. We've got other vet leaders there. Guys, it's going to be an absolutely astounding week. And then we also end off the week with an audit class, sorry, a master class on the ultimate audit preparation. So head off to complianceconference.com.au, have a look at the program. Like I said, we are live streaming, but we're also running master classes in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. And if there is a wide or a big enough demand in Adelaide, we'll come to Adelaide as well. But at the moment, it's Brisbane, Sydney, Perth, and Melbourne. So guys, go to the website, have a look at what's going to be happening, and yeah, go and book your spot. All right, let's look at what's happening today. That's enough. So for those of you, we've got a few newbies here, people that haven't joined us in the past, which is the definition of newbies. Guys, my apologies. For those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Alex Schroeder. I'm a sanction management specialist, as well as a forensic compliance auditor within the vet sector. I specialize in helping RTOs with rectification. Like I said, we are specialist, Big Prep, which is the company that I'm CEO of. We are a specialist rectification consultancy, and I spend a lot of time in the AAT with lawyers to help RTOs fight sanctions, etc. I'm also a member of the ASPR Stakeholder Liaison Group, ITECA, etc., etc. Guys, as always, I'm not going to carry on about myself. Feel free to go and stalk me on LinkedIn. Have a look at what I do, etc., if you want to know more about me. But yeah, like I said, feel free to stalk me on LinkedIn. I personally think it isn't that interesting, but who knows? So today, guys, like I said, we've got an almost full house, and I probably will not be able to get around to all questions. If I don't get around to your question, or if you think about a question after the webinar has ended, please email your questions to info@complianceinstitute.edu.au. The info team or the ARCP team will forward your emails to me, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Sometimes it's easier for me just to pick up the phone and give you a quick call if I feel that it's easier to have a chat with you rather than to email you back. Other times there might be questions that I can answer by a simple email. Having said that, I am on the road next week. I'm in Melbourne from Monday or Tuesday. Well, I'm in Melbourne next week. So the times that I could get back to you is going to be limited, but I will get back to you as soon as I can with any questions that you have emailed through. I've told you guys about the 2023 Vet Compliance Conference. I've mentioned the master classes. So guys, like I said, I'm really excited, especially given that over the last year, I've had so many requests for doing master classes, and tying the master classes in to the Vet Compliance Conference is going to be really, or it's just, it makes it practical. And guys, unlike other conferences, we are not going to be having 25 million speakers, so people need to decide who they want to go listen to. We've basically been lucky enough to get some of the top people in the vet sector to come and chat with us at the conference. And like I said, I'm very, very happy that ASPA has been able to spare us some of their senior team members to chat with us as well. Please don't forget the trainer and assessor webinars. They are also free of charge. We run them I think it's the last Friday of every month. And they are there specifically, they're designed to help your trainers and assessors remain compliant with their obligations under clause 1.13 of the standards. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing things a bit differently moving forward this year for the trainers and assessors. I'm going to be inviting some really interesting speakers to join me on the webinars. So the format will change a little bit, not on every webinar, but the format will change a little bit, just so that I can give better or an enhanced experience for the trainers and assessors. Lastly, before we go into self-assurance, guys, I've said this in the last 2 webinars, I need to stress ASQA is getting busy again with their regulatory activities. They are currently looking at CRICOS providers. We are seeing a number of CRICOS providers that are coming through with serious non-compliances. We've got a number of CRICOS providers that need to get ready to go to the tribunal. ASQA is really, really focusing at the moment on CRICOS as well as on aged care and childcare. So if you are a CRICOS provider, or if your RTO works in aged care or childcare, it is more critical than ever that you guys have a look at your compliance systems. You guys do internal audits, be it internally within your own RTO or engaging a compliance consultant, but it is absolutely critical that you do your self-examinations now before ASQA comes knocking on your door. Without any further ado, we are looking today at understanding the principles of self-assurance. We're also looking at how to identify gaps within your RTO's current compliance systems. We are looking at how to determine what resources you need to implement an effective self-assurance system. We are looking at understanding the processes that are required to support an effective self-assurance system of the RTO's compliance operations, and also identifying your staffing capabilities. And that one is really important. So I will spend a bit of time or a bit of extra time on that one during the webinar. So where does self-assurance come from? Guys, if we have a look at the RTO standards, the entire clause 2 is focused on self-assurance. And clause 2 essentially says that the RTO, and I'm not going to read it word for word, I've copied that from the standards, but essentially what clause 2, sorry, what's clause, yeah, standard 2 of the standards being clause 1.1, 1.2, sorry, again, standard 2 of the RTO standards being clauses 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. Basically, what they say is that an RTO is absolutely obligated by the NDR Act as well as by the RTO standards to ensure that it complies with the RTO standards at all times. And guys, it isn't almost compliant, isn't compliant 90%. An RTO must be 100% compliant with the RTO standards and therefore the NDR Act 100% of the time. And the RTO standards also requires RTOs to have systems and processes in place to constantly be checking their own operations and to constantly be able to be assured that they are actually being a quality provider. And once again, you need to be 100% compliant 100% of the time. It isn't a case of, well, I'm 90% compliant and that's good enough. Well, I'm almost compliant. It is 100% compliant. And this also applies to anybody that, or to any organization that is delivering services on behalf of the RTO. Remember that if you have a third-party agreement with any other provider, and be it for marketing, be it for co-delivery, be it international recruitment agents, if you have a third-party agreement with any other party, even including another RTO, the regulator looks at that third-party agreement and at that third-party relationship as if the third party is a subsidiary of your RTO. So therefore, what they do, where the operations under the third-party agreement is concerned, what they do is as if your RTO is doing it. So let's say, for argument's sake, that you've entered into a third-party agreement with another RTO to go and deliver a training product that both RTOs have on scope. Everything that RTO does regarding that training product, it's as if your RTO is doing it. So if their training and assessment practices are non-compliant, it's as if your RTO's training and assessment practices are non-compliant. Same as if you're a Crikos college and you use international agents for your student recruitment, it is essential that you have absolute, complete, and ongoing oversight of those marketing operations, because if the international agents, if their marketing practices aren't 100% compliant, we can't just say, well, that was our international agent and we'll make sure that they do things better. The NDR Act and the RTO standards say that their marketing activities are your marketing activities. Therefore, any non-compliance in those marketing activities is a non-compliance of your RTO. I hope that makes sense. And guys, the compliance with a third-party operator or third-party agreement does not only apply to the examples that I've just used, it applies to any third-party agreement that your RTO has entered into with another service provider or with another RTO. Standard 2 also requires your RTO to have sufficient resources and strategies in place to ensure that you are compliant at all times. So what is self-assurance? Guys, I've taken this from the ASCA website because it is absolutely, I couldn't have said it better myself. And ASCA basically, let me just reduce this so I can read this as well. ASCA says, self-assurance is when training providers have their own systems and practices to systematically monitor, evaluate, and continually improve their training outcomes and performance against the standards and obligations as an RTO. It's, like I said, I couldn't have said that better myself. So what does self-insurance comprise of? Basically, I've got a really good wheel here to share with you guys. Basically, self-assurance has a number of aspects to it. It has good governance, strong leadership, staff that have, or their staffing capabilities must be really, really good. And guys, when we speak about staffing capability, it's not only trainers and assessors. Ongoing professional development of all staff within the RTO. It also includes student engagement, student support, and ongoing engagement with industry or the community, depending on your RTO's target markets. Because all of those together, if you have got strong leadership, good governance, your staff know what they're doing and they are expert at what they're doing, they are continuously undergoing professional development to stay abreast of things. Your student engagement is correct, or your student engagement is good. Your student support is good. And if you are constantly interacting with industry to see what the industry needs are, all of that together results or should result in quality outcomes in the services that your RTO delivers. I hope that makes sense. And guys, if it doesn't, remember we have got Q&A later on at the end of this webinar. So let's have a look. What do we mean by strong leadership and governance? So often at Vet Prep, we come across RTOs that are being run by people that actually don't know very much about the RTO sector whatsoever. And usually it is actually, it's changed now. So usually we find that new Cricos operators, they've, a Cricos owner will come into the vet sector. They've gone through the whole long process and expensive process of getting the resources together, registering their Cricos RTO, and then starting operations. However, we find far too often that new Cricos operators don't actually understand what it means to operate a compliant RTO or how to operate a compliant RTO. And sadly, it is so often these guys that get caught up in the ASQA net of having non-compliances identified, not being able to rectify the non-compliances, and then ending up with their new business. And once again, like I said, these are businesses that they spend a lot of time and a lot of money getting registered, but that these businesses are then being threatened by closure because of the non-compliances. And 9 times out of 10, it goes back to the RTO operator not actually understanding what they need to do and what the operations need to look like in order for the RTO to be 100% compliant. We also often find that where there are smaller RTOs, and when I speak about smaller RTOs, sometimes it might be RTOs that is a single person running a small RTO, or it might be a small team. It might be an RTO with 2 or 3 people, maybe 5 people who are running a team. And although collectively they have an understanding of what it takes to run an RTO, they don't actually understand, or the leader of that RTO doesn't actually understand what the RTO needs to do to be fully compliant. And at the end of the day, if the captain of the ship doesn't understand or doesn't have all of the information on what the RTO needs to do to remain compliant, then that person can't lead the rest of the team. And it's almost like a house of cards that then starts falling down. Another thing that we often find is that in bigger RTOs as well, we've recently, I think it was last year, we worked with 4 large RTOs who went and recruited CEOs from outside of the vet sector because they had really good leadership skills, or they had really good business ideas, or they had really good connections, or all of the above. The RTO boards of directors then go, oh my gosh, this candidate is ideal with their expertise and with their connections. We can really grow the RTO, without realizing that if the CEO themselves, if they don't understand what it takes to run a compliant RTO, once again, then how do they ensure that the RTO is compliant? it always gives me shivers in not a very good way when an RTO has gone and hired a compliance manager, or actually anybody within the leadership team that does not come from the RTO sector, because we all know that within our sector we have ways of doing things that are not applicable to other sectors. We've got acronyms, we've got languages, we've got, we walk a different walk, we talk a different talk, and it doesn't matter how good a leader you are, it doesn't matter what good managerial experience you have, who your connections are, etc. If you don't understand the fundamentals of what or how to run a compliant RTO, you don't actually have strong leadership or governance within the RTO. When we look at staffing capability, it is so essential that everybody within the RTO knows exactly what they are doing and how to do their job role in a compliant manner, because at the end of the day, compliance within an RTO doesn't only lie in the compliance department. Every single person in an RTO is part of the RTO's compliance operations. It goes from your admin team to your student support team, to your data entry team members. It goes trainers and assessors. It literally goes across the entire RTO. And if your staff do not have the knowledge and the skills that they need to be able to do their job properly and compliantly, how can you expect your RTO to have compliant operations? It's also really important for all people within an RTO to undergo continuous professional development. And guys, I love the fact that every fortnight we have so many compliance practitioners that do attend the webinars, because this is part of your professional development. When we get together for the webinars, I always try and share new things happening, or new directions that ASCA is taking. I always try and share that with you guys. I always try and share with you guys information to help you make your job better. And although, like I said, I'm always incredibly thrilled at the numbers that we have, if you think about it, that there are almost 4,000 RTOs in Australia, and I think at last count there was, excluding trainers and assessors, there was something like 15 or 20,000 people working within the RTO sector. And yes, I know that I'm not the only person doing professional development. However, it sometimes leaves me concerned when I think about how many people are potentially not undertaking regular professional development. Give you guys an idea. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last webinar. I may have. I'm going to repeat it. I was recently with a client and I spoke with one of their compliance team members who we were chatting about period transfers. And he gave me his understanding of how period transfers work. And it was wrong. And when I said to him, hey, where did you get your understanding from? He'd actually attended a PD webinar by another compliance consultant who gave him the incorrect information, and he was then using that incorrect information within their RTO. And it's sad that there are professional development providers out there that do get it wrong. However, it's also a case of every single team member within the RTO needs to undertake professional development, because if you don't undertake regular professional development, how do you actually keep up to date with what is changing? So what does, in a good, robust self-assurance model, what do the following pieces look like? What does student engagement look like? What does effective student support look like? Because guys, there's student support and there's effective student support. And the two are actually, they can be quite different. And having said that, every RTO obviously has a different way that they provide student support. But what does effective student support look like? And what do we mean by ongoing industry engagement? To give you guys an idea, as you know, these webinars that I run, they are sponsored by ARCP and VetPrep. And the way that, or one of the ways that ARCP engages with the industry is via these free webinars, because you guys are the industry. Remember, ARCP only delivers compliance training to the vet sector. They haven't gone up to the rest of the world. They specialize in delivering training only to the vet sector. So when you guys join me on these webinars, and from your questions and from the feedback that we regularly get after the webinars, that is from your questions during the webinar, I feed those back to ARCP. One of the reasons why I ask that you send any other questions in via the ARCP email is because they then also have an overview of what kind of questions are being asked. We have had so many, we've had requests over different periods of time for new products, new non-accredited trading, etc. But these webinars is one of the ways that ARCP stays in contact with RTOs to make sure that ultimately what they are delivering in both their non-accredited and their accredited training products actually meets industry needs. Now, different RTOs will obviously do it differently, because ARCP is the only RTO that specializes in only training the vet sector. Obviously, the same won't work for other RTOs. So other RTOs will go into the industry in which you specialize in, or the industries in which you deliver training, and keeping on talking to your industry, because that is the absolute best way to make sure that your RTO keeps on delivering what the industry, or keeps on delivering training in what the industry needs graduates to be trained in. We spoke, or said earlier on, that we were also chatting about identifying gaps in your RTO's current systems. So one of the things that ASCA started focusing on probably early last year was compliance systems. And I'll never forget, I've been in the game now for 15, 17, God knows how many years. The very first time that I read, an RTO came through to us and they said, hey, we've been found non-compliant. We've got all of these areas that we need to rectify. We don't know how to do it. Can you guys help us? And as I was reading through the audit report, I thought to myself, the audit report keeps on hammering on about compliance systems, compliance systems, compliance systems. And in all the years of being a rectification specialist, I'd never seen it before. And I remember getting on the phone to people in ASPA and saying to them, look, what are you guys on about? Where in the standards and where in the NDI Act does it speak about compliance systems? And it was interesting and also very humbling when ASPA said to me, and I obviously can't say who in ASPA, they said, hey, Alex, if you think about it, Standard 2 is all about compliance systems. And I was very fortunate, I guess because I've got a really good working relationship with ASPA, I was very fortunate being able to then sit down and chat with the guys and say to them, look, explain to me what kind of compliance systems you guys are looking for and what they should look like. And since then, and look, the list of compliance systems vary from RTO to RTO. It varies depending if you're an enterprise RTO, not-for-profit, if you are a CRICOS RTO or domestic RTO. But essentially, compliance systems, in a nutshell, at a bare minimum, RTO should have a compliance system for developing training products and the related documents. So it might be a compliance system where you say, okay, before we go and put this training product on scope, what is our process? Documentation for products is things like your TASs. How do you write your TASs? How do you validate your TASs? How do you oversee your TASs? How do you audit your TASs? Compliance systems also include marketing and recruitment systems. It looks at your enrollment systems. You've got to have a compliance system for how training and assessment is being delivered. There's compliance systems for trainers and assessors' credentials, and ensuring that they continue to always meet the requirements of clause 1.13. You've got compliance systems for student support and student success. You've got compliance systems for completions, your AQF documentation issuing, credit transfers and verifications, etc., etc., etc. So if you take nothing else away from today's webinar, please take away with you that your RTO needs very well documented and very logically and easy, user-friendly compliance systems, and they can consist of many things. Policy, generally, the compliance systems that we develop for clients is a combination of flowcharts and policies and procedures and documents that go with that and forms and all things like that. So once again, if you take nothing away from today other than, or if you only take one thing away from today, please take with you, have a look at your RTO's compliance systems. Have a look at your documented compliance systems and have a real critical look at them and see if you have the baseline compliance systems like the ones that I've just read off, and have a look to see which of these baseline compliance systems you are missing. If you have the baseline compliance systems, be they all of these compliance systems or even some of them, then go and unpack those compliance systems and have a look to see what you've used to make up those compliance systems, because this you can take to the bank, that at your next ASPL audit, they are going to be asking you what your compliance systems are. So speaking about, we're going to move on to staffing capabilities now. Why do we need to make sure that our staff, and remember I said earlier on that when it comes to staffing capabilities and professional development, that we need to make sure that all of the staff within the RTO are capable of doing their job and continue their professional development. So why is it so important? First of all, there's nothing worse, at least to me, and nothing more frustrating than being thrown in the deep end, being asked to do something, and yet I don't have clarity on what it is that I need to do and how I'm expected to do it. Now, if you guys think that I don't think I'm the only person that feels that way. Can you take just 10 seconds and ask yourself how you feel if you're suddenly thrown in the deep end without much direction and you're expected to swim, but you actually don't know how to swim properly? That is what it feels like for people, for our team members, if we ask them to do something and they don't actually know how to do it, or they think they know how to do it, and this is actually even worse. They think they know how to do it, then they get it wrong. And when they get it wrong, suddenly they get sent to the naughty corner, or we don't discover they've done it wrong until we are actually smacked down at audit time. So it is so important for all of your team members to have the necessary skill and expertise to do the job role that they are expected to do. And also, guys, think about it. If you know that you know how to do your job, it also gives you a beautiful level of confidence in the work that you are producing. Does that make sense? So from that perspective, your staffing capabilities are so important. And guys, so is your ongoing professional development. And we spoke about professional development in the previous slide. And quite frankly, there's no reason whatsoever for any RTO team member across this entire country and in our entire vet sector not to actually know their job role. Because And I'm just going to go through the stuff that ARCP offers, because obviously I don't know what all the other RTOs offer, but um, we've spoken about the ongoing professional development, but ARCP has the foundations of RTO compliance, which is there for people that are brand spanking new in the vet sector, and to actually give them an idea of what we do within the vet sector and to help them find their feet in the vet sector. There is the RTO Standards Unpacked course, which helps you understand every single clause of the RTO standards. It helps you understand how to interpret the meaning of the clauses, how to use those clauses, how to incorporate those clauses into your RTO's compliance operations, how to rectify non-compliances. There is the RTO Validator program, which is designed to help people become expert validators at the level of where at AAT level. There's the third for an RTO compliance. There's a diploma of RTO compliance management. There's the diploma of quality auditing. There's the compliance skill set. There's the auditing skill set. There is so much out there for people to be able to go and learn how to do their jobs that there really is no excuse. I've said to many of you in the past that the reason why I went, or for those of you who don't know, I went back in 2017, 2018, thereabout-ish. I took about a year off life, maybe a year and a half. And I went and I wrote the cert for an RTO compliance, and I wrote the diploma of RTO compliance management. And the reason why I wrote those courses was because for years I would do, I'd walk into audit after audit after audit, and the RTOs, and I found RTOs were non-compliant. And when I started chatting to the compliance managers and saying to them, look, we've discovered where you are non-compliant. Let's go discover why you are non-compliant. By and large, I had so many people say to me, well, because they actually don't know what compliance is. They were compliance manager within the RTO, resigned. They put their hand up, or their hand was put up for them. They became compliance manager, and there was no formal training for them to actually learn how to do compliance. Now, guys, if you think about that, and that is, like I said, where all of the compliance courses that I've developed has come from. If you think about it, there is so much out there for people to be able to go and learn and get real expert at their job role within the RTO, that there really isn't any excuse for your RTO not to upskill everybody in their team, and to make sure that every single person within the RTO knows exactly how to do their job properly, effectively, and efficiently. And when we have people that have the skills, or when we have a team within the RTO, let me rephrase it. When we have an RTO and their entire team knows or are expert and skilled at how to do their specific job role effectively, efficiently, and compliantly, then the RTO shouldn't have any issues, provided, of course, that there's oversight. We'll look at that just now. But guys, I'm going on about staffing capabilities at the moment because it is so important. And we have seen over the last 12 to 18 months, we've seen it becoming more and more and more crucial to an RTO's survival, which is why, for those of you that have been following me for a while, you'll know that I wrote the RTO Standards Unpacked program about 18 months ago. The Foundations of RTO Compliance I wrote about 2 years ago, but the RTO Validator program, we developed that about 6 or 9 months ago. And everything has been designed to help people within the vet sector be able to do their job roles expertly. So once again, there's no reason why people shouldn't know how to do their jobs properly. Now, very briefly, before we go on to the next slide, so often I hear people say, oh, my manager wants me to go and do a TAE, even though I'm a compliance practitioner. I'm going to touch very, very quickly on, do non-trainers and assessors, do they need, or is there much value in them doing the TAE? I've got my diplomas in TAE, I've got my Cert 4 in TAE, like most of us. Guys, as a compliance practitioner myself, I honestly believe that the TAE is not of much value to vet practitioners unless they are actually trainers and assessors. As a compliance practitioner and as a non-compliance team member within an RTO, you do not need the TAE. Your trainers and assessors absolutely do, but people shouldn't be, in my opinion, instead of spending time and effort and money doing the TAE, if you are not a trainer and assessor, what good is a TAE going to do for you? A lot of times I hear, oh, but my manager says that if I know that, or if I've done my TAE, I can validate, I can do this, I can do that. Guys, that's not really the purpose of the TAE. So if you are thinking of, or if your manager comes and says to you, hey, go upskill yourself as a non-trainer and assessor by doing a TAE, think twice, because once again, a TAE does not necessarily help trainers, does not necessarily help non-trainers and assessors in the vet sector. So what resources does an RTO need to implement an effective self-assurance system? Guys, obviously you need the human resources, and with human resources, it might be internal to the RTO, it might be external to the RTO. And as I said seconds ago, part of your internal resource, your internal human resource must be vet your team members that actually know what they're doing and are actually skilled and expert at the functions within their job role. External resources might be a case of getting your external consultant in to come and do the oversight of your quality assurance, or have your external consultant there that you can pick up the phone and you can say, hang on, we've got a question. About a half an hour, maybe 20 minutes before the webinar started, I had a voicemail from one of our corporate clients that said to me, hey, can you give me a call? We've had this and this question within the RTO, and before you take it any further, can I just run this past you? Guys, having your external compliance consultant, who are hopefully expert at compliance, and a lot of people aren't, but being able to have the human resource of having your external compliance consultant on speed dial is invaluable in assuring your RTO self-assurance system. Resources, you're looking at systems resources, your compliance systems, as we discussed just now, your business resources, your software, your hardware, etc. But it also includes your quality control resources. And once again, that could be internal quality control, it could be external quality control resources, or it might be a combination thereof. It might be a case of, for quality control, that your RTO has a system where it does regular internal reviews of your operations, and then periodically you get your external compliance consultant in to come and do your internal audit from a different perspective. And of course, your RTO does need the financial resources. Guys, many years ago, when I came into the vet sector, initially back in the early 2000s, was it maybe, I don't know when it was years and years ago, RTOs, or running an RTO, was like having a printing press. It was the quickest way to make a bucket load of money, and a lot of RTOs came in and they made buckets and buckets and buckets loads of money. But that changed when ASPA came, and initially when ASPA came in, I think it was around about 2012, 2013, and suddenly the printing press that was the vet sector started drying up. And we're at the stage today where, yes, it is still very profitable running an RTO if it's done properly, but if your RTO wants to be profitable, it also needs to go and spend the money in order to be profitable and be compliant. So in all of this, whether it is upskilling your staff, whether it is hiring more staff with the skills that you need, whether it is working with an external consultant, whether it is needing to invest in developing compliance systems, needing to invest in a new LMS, DMS, etc., internal audits, external audits, all of those cost money. And if you are working for an RTO, or if you run an RTO where you are concerned about, hang on, can we afford this? Can we afford that? My answer to you is you can not afford to invest money in that, because unless you've got these systems and these stopgaps in place, how do you ensure that you have got a self-assurance system that will lead to being a quality provider and will, in all likelihood and hopefully, maintain your compliance so that you don't get caught in the ASQA net. So in ASQA's net, not ASQA net. So what is the process? What processes does an RTO need to support self-assurance? Guys, I stole this information from another website because it was so beautifully worded. So have a look at that. A provider who is applying effective self-assurance practices will identify and fix issues as they arise. However, you need to have the skills and expertise within your RTO to be able to identify an issue has arisen and to be able to fix the issue that has arisen. A provider who's applying effective self-assurance practices will also manage risks to quality outcomes, and in doing so, ensuring quality student outcomes. It will also have the confidence that it meets the regulatory requirements. So I guess what they're saying here is that RTOs that have effective self-assurance practices will have practices and operations in place that they can identify and fix issues really quickly, and they can fix the issues proficiently and in an expert manner. It also has a look at managing the risks, and by doing so, ensuring quality student outcomes, and it also has the confidence that they are constantly compliant. Give you guys an example. Because VetPrep and ARCP work very closely together, VetPrep also manages ARCP's compliance for them, and I help a little bit with the training and assessment of the courses that I wrote. ARCP had a phone call from a current student the other day who, since he started doing the course, he's actually no longer working for an RTO, which makes it a bit interesting. And he was having difficulty with how one of the units was being delivered. And I ended up having a chat with him, and we had a long chat. And I said to him, look, first of all, we need to appreciate that when you started the course, your circumstances were different because you had the support of working within an RTO environment, which is how the courses are basically geared. But now that you've left and now that you are not within an RTO environment, obviously you're going to have a few more obstacles than if you were still within an RTO. And I said to him, look, what can we do to make your learning journey easier for you and more enjoyable for you? And he came up with about 6 suggestions. Of those, and I then had a chat to ARCP, and of those 6 suggestions, 2 of them were not practical to implement or were not practical because the implementation thereof would have benefited one person, but not the other students. But he also came up with 4 other suggestions that are really good. And those 4 suggestions, ARCP is going to start implementing as of the 1st of May. Now, this is an example, I suppose, not of looking at how something was broken and how they could fix it, because the fact that he was having a different experience was change of circumstance. But to me, it is such a good example of a student coming and saying, I'm battling, my circumstances have changed. I know it's really not ARCP's fault. However, I need some extra help, and here are some suggestions that will not only help me, but will also make potentially the learning journey more beneficial for your other students as well. And as I said, ARCP jumped on that because not only, or even without those suggestions, they are still compliant. That's my job after all, making sure they're compliant. But because ARCP works so hard to being a quality provider that has a really good self-assurance system. They just said, yep, you know what, when can we implement this? How soon can we do this? How soon can we do that? And that's part of being a quality provider. That's part of being a self-assured provider. It's part of having a self-assurance system in place where you can be responsive to feedback from students and from industry. So an RTO who is applying effective self-assurance practices will also, and once again, it's also stolen from somebody else, will also ask, how do we know how we're doing? They'll have a look to see what evidence they are using to make sure that they are actually doing a good job. The RTO will also constantly ask itself, are we doing good? How are we doing overall? Are we providing quality training and assessment services to our students? Are we doing the best that we can in providing student support? Because obviously from student support also comes student success. They will also ask, what do we need to do next? Because this is where we are at the moment. But as in any business, and RTOs to some extent share a lot of commonalities with non-RTO businesses. And in this instance, insofar as I believe the RTO sector is highly competitive, apart from being highly regulated, it's also highly competitive. And I don't think any RTO, or there aren't many RTOs that I can think of, that can afford to sit on their laurels and go, we've got these programs, we've got this, let's just sit back and just carry on, have a cup of tea and just carry on, or whatever that expression is. An effective RTO that practices self-assurance will constantly be asking itself, how are we actually doing? Are we doing as well as we think we're doing? What kind of feedback are we getting from our students? What kind of questions are our student support team getting from our students when it comes to their learning and their assessment? How can we make things better for our students? It's the constant improvement, it's the constant evolving, not only in their practices, but also in their products, but obviously also ensuring that they remain compliant. It's as simple as that. It's actually not rocket science. Examples of self-assurance practices, and guys, I'm aware that we've got 8 minutes. I'm so sorry, I've been chatting away crazily. But examples of self-assurance practices it is quintessential for any RTO to have an audit schedule. You need to be doing your compliance reviews and your internal audits regularly. You need to have schedules for when you do it, because remember, if we don't have something scheduled, if we don't have an actual plan to which we are working, it's very easy to lose track. Give you guys an idea, and I'm sure I've used this example before, but forgive me if I have. But I enrolled to do a diploma of social media marketing or digital marketing. I think I was meant to start my course in December, maybe January. Even the fact that I'm sitting here thinking just shows you, because I hadn't actually built that into my work-life schedule. I'm now sitting the 14th of April, and I haven't yet started my course. And it's bad. It's really, really, really bad. And I'm almost kind of embarrassed to sit here and say to 497 people, hey, I've been completely slack. I haven't actually started my course, and I've now got to go and start and do some major catching up. But I'm using this example to show you guys that I believe, and I know myself, I believe that if I had actually sat down, worked out how I was going to fit in the learning in my work-life balance overall process, that I would have started my course by now. And, my hubby looks at me and says to me, oh, but you're busy, and, you don't have time, and you don't have time for this, you don't have time for that. However, I know that is no excuse. And once again, I know that if I had gone and scheduled, if I'd said, okay, I am going to be studying Monday nights, Wednesday nights, Wednesday nights, and Sunday nights, I'll be studying and doing my assessments, I would have been on track by now. The same goes for having your internal audits and your quality review schedules, guys. If you don't actually have them scheduled, and if you don't have them set in stone within your schedule, it is so easy for other things to get in the way, for other important things and urgent things to get in the way, that the next thing you look, it's 6 months down the track. And where you should have done an internal review, or where you should have done 2 internal reviews possibly by now, it's 6 months down the track and you haven't even done your first one. So it is so important to have schedules for your internal audits, and whether you call them a quality review, an internal audit, a self-assessment, they're the same thing. You also need to make sure that, or another example of self-assurance practices is making sure that you actually follow your continuous improvement plans, because at the end of the day, it's a waste of time to gather all the feedback, to sit and strategize how you are going to improve your RTOs operations and the learning journey for your students, and your compliance operations and everything else if you actually don't follow through with it. How many of you, if you look at your continuous improvement register right now, how many of you have got more than 10% of CI items that are still outstanding? Oh, I'm getting some hands up. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say, hey, you need to fess up. I guess I'm sort of challenging you to, in your own time, reflect and have a look at your continuous improvement register and see if all of your CI items are up to date, or if you have CI items that are overdue, or does your RTO have a continuous improvement register where the due dates or things keep on being moved because you've run out of time or because you've been too busy to do them? It's really important that you follow your continuous improvement plans and that you actually implement them, and remember to document them as well. Self-assurance, excuse me one sec, guys, my throat's going a bit dry. Guys, unless you've got dedicated compliance team members who are skilled and expert at what they do, whether it is internal or external, your RTO cannot be self-assured, or your RTO won't be a self-assured provider, simply because dedicated compliance staff goes hand in hand with self-assurance. And I'm going to take it one step further. I'm also going to say that unless your RTO has competent, skilled, and expert team members for every single job role, or has a plan in how to implement it really, really quickly, that your RTOs are far way off from practicing self-assurance or from having solid self-assurance practices. Governance boards and education committees within RTOs have become really valuable and really popular over the last 2 or 3 years. I know myself, I think I'm on 6 or 7 or 8, might be a dozen government boards for RTOs. And the purpose of governance boards is to sit at a high level and to oversee the operations of the RTO, not only from a compliance point of view, but also from an operational point of view. It's almost like a governance board is there to make sure that everything that happens within the RTO is operationally is compliant. And some RTOs take it a bit further, and I must say I'm a huge advocate of it, where a really good effective governance board looks at everything within the RTO. They look to see if the products being offered, if there's financial viability in offering the products. They look at the finances of the RTO. Is the RTO actually spending, I'm trying to put this very diplomatically, is the RTO, is the expenditure worth what the income is? Is the RTO wasting money? Is the RTO underspending and therefore they are underperforming? So there's a whole load of things that governance boards do. It is also a really good idea there's also education committees which do pretty much the same thing, but education committees generally don't get involved at the same level of governance boards. Guys, regardless of the size of your RTO, it's a really, really good idea to suggest to your CEO or your RTO owner to think about having a governance board, because governance boards don't have to be expensive. A small RTO would not need a governance board of more than 3 people. Larger RTOs, a medium-sized RTO, might have a governance board of 5 people. A governance board doesn't have to be massive, but they are so effective, and they also help the RTO maintain self-assurance practices, amongst other things. Another example of self-assurance practices is engage with the industry when you're developing your training and assessment strategies. Do regular reviews and considerations of the feedback that you receive. And that might be feedback from staff, from students, from industry, from the regulator. If you do state funded training, from your state funding body, it might be feedback. It's any kind of feedback that you get. I personally have this perception, or my belief is that feedback is always valuable. Not all feedback is always logical to implement, but feedback is an excellent way for an RTO to be able to gauge how they're doing. If you are constantly getting fantastic feedback, wonderful. It gives you the confidence that your RTO is on the right track. If you get a mixture between good and bad reviews and feedback, as long as you sit back and you actually reflect what the value of that feedback is to operations, but it's all part of assuring that you are running a quality operation. Professional development and staff capability, I've spoken about that to death. I'm not going to repeat that one. Networking with other RTOs, guys, is really, really valuable. It's so good to be able to chat with other RTOs and say, hey, how are you guys doing this? And how do you guys do that? I think one of my strengths as a compliance practitioner lies is I have got I'm very fortunate and very privileged to have an extensive network across RTOs, compliance practitioners, lawyers, accountants, everything to do with the vet sector, that where I actually don't have an answer for something, or if I don't have a solution for something, I can pick up the phone and I can phone somebody. I can say, hey, you know what? I'm stuck. What would you do in this situation? Or can I just brainstorm with you? And guys, it is absolutely invaluable to network with other RTOs. Remember, other businesses don't have to be your competition. But not only that, outside of the vet sector, businesses are competing with each other the whole time. And networking with other RTOs doesn't mean that they are going to go and steal your market share. But what it does mean is that if you are stuck with something, or if you do want to brainstorm, you've got somebody else to phone, and you can say to them, "Can you guys talk me through this?" As I said, I do it with other consultants as well, because despite the fact that I have got substantial expertise and knowledge within the vet sector, I don't know everything. And sometimes I'll get a phone call from a client and they want to brainstorm, and I go, you know what? I need to process this. Let me get back to you. And as I'm processing what they were asking me about, sometimes I think to myself, hang on, I want to go and phone this and this person and just brainstorm with them. And guys, that is what business is all about. It's all about having a network where you can brainstorm, where you can pick up the phone, you can say, hey, mate, you know what? Can I just have 5 minutes of your time? Can I just talk this through? I love the fact that I have got my AAT expertise is pretty damn good. But I still pick up the phone. I still speak to lawyers. And I still say to them, hey, you know what? I've just read this audit report. Can I just brainstorm with you? Because I just want to I want to get your opinion. I want to make sure that I'm not acting as an island and revolving all of my, I want to make sure I'm not acting as an island. I want to make sure that I can at all times give the best help and suggestions to my clients. And the way that I do that is I network with other people. There's no reason why RTOs can't network either. We spoke earlier on in analysis, well, we spoke loosely about analyzing your student data, but that includes your student progression, your complaints, and your completion. If you've got 500 students in your RTO and 20% of them don't progress or don't progress sufficiently or satisfactory, then you need to have a look to see, are you doing it correctly? I remember when ARCP first started, they started working or operating as a non-RTO back in 2017-ish. They were auspicing with a registered RTO. And when ARCP rolled out their programs, because everything was 100% online, it was basically self-paced online course. And then they sat down one day and they realized that their progression rate was actually quite dismal. And after a lot of brainstorming, they then adapted a process where they now do a very structured online training course. And the interesting thing is that since they've done that, since they've actually offered it as a structured course, their non-completion rate, I think as of about 3 or 4 months ago, I think they've got something like 2% of their students that don't actually complete. So, and the reason why I use that example is, like I said, they tried something one way when they were brand new in the vet sector. They had a look and they saw the impact, or they had a look at their completion and progression rates. They realized that something was wrong. And we did a lot of analysis, a lot of brainstorming, decided to go and try the structured approach. And since the structured approach they've implemented, like I said, they've got a 98% success rate, which for 100% online, or for an RTO for an RTO that does 100% online training, that's pretty good. And guys, also your pre and post implementation validation and moderation activities. For those of you that follow me and that attend my webinars regularly, you'll know that I'm a massive advocate in you've got to make sure that your assessment resources are valid and compliant before you implement them. You've got to validate your assessment resources before you use them the first time to make sure that what you are rolling out is compliant, because it's so damn difficult rectifying historic non-compliances where your assessment tools are concerned. And also, if you are using non-compliant or insufficient learning and assessment resources, how can you be a quality provider? I am woefully over time, guys. It's 1:07. I really do apologize. I'm going to, for those of you that have got time to just bear with me for another few minutes, I'm going to just answer 1 or 2 questions. Actually, no, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to ask, it's almost 1:10. Can you please email your questions to me, even the questions that you've put on the board. The moment that the webinar ends, we lose the questions. So please email your questions to info@complianceinstitute.edu.au. We will get back to you guys. And guys, I'm so sorry for going over time. I should actually have scheduled this in for 90 minutes. I hope you've all had a really good webinar. I hope the information I've shared with you, that it has been valuable to you. I hope that it's been worth the time that you've spent with me. Thank you so much for that. And until the 28th, bye-bye. And guys, please, before we go, 2 quick ones. When you get, ARCP often has emails from people saying, I did not get my certificate of attendance. What happens is at the end of the webinar, you will get an email from GoToWebinar or ARCP that says, thanks for attending, etc., etc. At the bottom of that email is the link to your certificate of attendance. Please go make sure that you open the link, that you download your certificate of attendance, because ARCP does not and cannot issue individual certificates of attendance. Imagine if they sat down today and had to go and issue 497 certificates. It's Absolutely. It's just it's not doable, especially for something which is being, or to them the webinars are a cost center. So please make sure, keep an eye out for that email. Um, even keep an eye out in your spam. When that email comes through, don't just disregard it. Open it, get the link at the bottom, and go and get your certificate of attendance. Because as I've said, if you don't download it from the link, you unfortunately won't have a certificate for today's webinar. I'm now really going to go. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Have a brilliant weekend. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks' time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.